eventually finding her way to Colorado. There, she traded on her looks in the dangerous world of prostitution.
A lot of these people, when they can get what they want out of you, then they get mean with you. 'Cause that's a rough life, especially being a girl like she was.
In her mind, that was the best she could do. That's what she was good at. That's what she could earn a living at. That was all she could earn a living at.
She didn't wear the leather skirts and the mini skirts and the stiletto heels. She wore shorts and T-shirts.
Aileen's wild ways and explosive temper often got her in trouble with the law. The teenager was arrested for disorderly conduct and wanted for grand larceny. Finally, in early 1976, she settled in Daytona Beach, Florida.
I think that the promise of sun and fun is the traditional lure of Florida, and I don't think it was any different for Aileen.
She left Michigan because it was so cold on her feet and the hitchhike and stuff, and she went to Florida so she could sleep on the beach and still do her prostitution.
I wound up playing the harlot out there and committing adultery, I'm sure, since I went to bed with so many married men, while I thieved and ripped them off, too.
Her first year in the Sunshine State was a turbulent one. The 20-year-old received word that her grandfather had been found dead in his garage in Michigan, an apparent suicide. That spring, Aileen abruptly married a 70-year-old retiree named Louis Fell. Aileen met Louis when he picked her up hitchhiking.
I had gotten a letter from her when she married that old man. That was so funny. She married him so she wouldn't have to be on the road is all.
He was pretty well off, and perhaps it was her best chance of some kind of normal life because he was spending money on her, but she was not able to curtail those outbursts and to behave like a normal person.
The marriage ended after only 9 weeks. Louis filed for divorce, claiming Aileen had hit him with his cane when he stopped giving her spending money. And then came the most difficult blow. In July 1976, her brother Keith died of throat cancer.
She loved Keith a lot. She was, of course, devastated.
He was her ally, and for all the fighting that went on between them, he stood by her. He was loyal to her.
Aileen drowned her sorrows in alcohol and went right back to her vagabond lifestyle. She worked the exit ramps up and down the Florida highways, taking on customers wherever she could.
That's when I didn't really want to hear from her because I didn't know where she was going to be next, what she was going to do, and could she be dead.
In 1978, at the age of 22, Aileen decided she couldn't take any more of her hardscrabble existence. One afternoon, she took a .22 caliber pistol and shot herself in the abdomen. At the hospital, she told doctors it was not the first time she had attempted suicide. She recovered from the gunshot wound, but she received minimal psychological counseling. 3 years later, in May 1981, in a drunken stupor, she robbed this Edgewater, Florida mini-mart at gunpoint.
She had had an argument, I guess, with this fellow who she had lived with for about a year. And she was trying to get his attention in whatever way to see how he would react if she did a robbery.
So she went into a little mini-mart, clutching her gun and wearing a bikini, if you can believe it, and held the gun in front of the woman cashier, frightened the cashier to death, and asked for the money that was in the till.
She left the store, went down US 1, a car she was in, an old car, overheated, and that's why she stopped. And by then, they had a description out on her, and the police were everywhere, and they picked her up.
Aileen pleaded guilty to robbery with a weapon and was sentenced to 3 years in prison. She spent her time reading the Bible, complaining about being shut in with lesbian inmates, and waiting to get back together with her boyfriend. Upon her release in 1983, the 27-year-old returned to a life of alcohol, hitchhiking, and prostitution. It was a life not many wanted to share.
She had this feeling that any relationship with a man was not going to last. that something was going to happen, they were going to drop her or dump her, whatever.
Desperate for a connection, she turned to women and quickly found acceptance.
I became a lesbian around 28, and all of it would get me in a world of trouble.
Aileen began cruising the biker bars of South Florida during the spring of 1986. Dubbed Lee by her new circle of acquaintances, she soon found a girlfriend, 24-year-old Tyra Moore.
Aileen met Tyra Moore, who was to be the most important romantic relationship in her entire life, in a biker bar.
She was in there alone, I was in there alone. We started a conversation and she went home with me that night.
They shut the bedroom door and they stayed in the bedroom for an entire weekend and didn't emerge really, except for to grab some food. So from then on, they became inseparable. That was the anchor Aileen had been looking for.
I don't know that she was gay. I think maybe she turned herself that way just to see if that way of life would work for her.
The two women lived like nomads, changing homes frequently, from a room in a friend's apartment, to a trailer, to motel rooms, sometimes the woods. By day, Aileen worked the highways, earning a few $100s a week.
Once I found out she was prostituting, I tried everything I could to have her stop doing that, because for one, it's not safe, and that I did care about her. But she never gave it up.
Aileen would come home evenings and weekends. She and Ty would spend time watching television or drinking at a bar. But her anger was always just below the surface.
There was numerous times that her and I would go to a grocery store and somebody would look at her wrong and she would just like fly off the handle at them. Like, what are you looking at me for? And it was very embarrassing a lot of times.
Despite Aileen's temper, Ty stayed with her. Aileen called her her wife and seemed happy to be providing for her, creating their own kind of home.
Aileen is so desperate in her life to be loved by somebody. Nobody's ever unconditionally loved her back, and she was just trying to hold on to that.
At 33, Aileen Wuornos had finally found the companionship she'd always craved, and she would do whatever it took to keep it from slipping away. By the fall of 1989, Aileen Wuornos had been working the Florida highways as a prostitute for more than a decade. The wear and tear of her lifestyle was beginning to show on the 33-year-old.
To say that the bloom was off the rose would be an understatement. Her looks had taken a beating. She did not have the natural tools with which to bring in the clients.
Her girlfriend Tyra worked on and off cleaning motel rooms, and the lack of money was causing stress in their relationship. But Aileen was desperate to keep her companion by her side.
It seemed like I was all she had, and I felt if I left, she wouldn't have anything.
She really felt under threat, big time, that Tyra might leave her and that she would be all on her own again, and she couldn't allow that to happen.
I completely lost it, Lord. Hypnotically entranced in our companionship, so deeply lost in its same-sex relationship, causing me then to do the unthinkable.
On the night of November 30th, 1989, just outside Tampa, Wuornos was picked up by a 51-year-old electronics repairman named Richard Mallory.
He was heading towards Daytona Beach for a weekend of partying. She met him, propositioned him. He said yes. They agreed to have sex.
They parked the car in the woods near I-95 and Route 1 and drank and talked until dawn. It was only then that Wuornos pulled out the .22 caliber handgun she had brought with her and shot Mallory 4 times in the chest and back. After rifling through her victim's pockets and stealing whatever money he had, Wuornos covered his lifeless body with carpet she found nearby and drove away in his car. When she got home, She told Tyra what she had done.
She had told me that she had killed someone,